Hi guys, welcome back to another video with Pratham Test Prep. This is your host Sanjeet Bhatia again, and we are back with a very important session that was all expected, and I was requested by a lot of students to start covering the most important cases for your CLAT and AILET for at least 2022, right? So there are some basic cases that I have taken into consideration while making a list. So we'll be discussing, and I'll have a lot of parts of this video. We'll keep on discussing a lot of important cases that are meant for your CLAT and AILET. So do make sure that you are liking this channel, and also don't forget to hit on the subscribe button so that you can get all your regular updates. Right? So before we move ahead, a small request to all of you: if you are not a part of our Telegram channel, do make sure that you are subscribing to our Telegram channel under the name of CLAT@Pratham. Okay, so now what is the first most important case that we have in our hand today? That is that the consent of family or community is not required to marry, right? If you are adults, then you don't require the consent of the family or the relatives or the community, whatever. Right? Now, what was happening in this case? Right? This is the case of a person called Lakshmi Bai Chandragi. Okay? Now, there was, this person was an adult who went out, eloped with her lover, and she got married, and the women's parents were not in the favor of the same. Now, she started living with her husband. Now, there was a missing complaint that was filed by the parents of the female. Now, there was an investigation officer that went to the women's house, right? And also, despite the police, right, instituted that Chandragadi comes to the local police station to give a statement, failing for the same would lead to kidnapping case that would be slapped on them, and that will also lead to go towards the place where they are working. And obviously, when it will go to the place that you are working, that will also affect their reputation and also the goodwill that they have very negatively. Now, what are the basic issues that were there in this case? Right. First, that the steps that were taken by the investigation officers, were they correct? Now, second, should the FIR that was lodged should be quashed or not? ठीक है, ऐसी FIR जो डराने के लिए की जा रही है या बोला जा रहा है अगर आप नहीं आओगे तो आपके साथ ऐसा हो जाएगा, आपके अगेंस्ट में कंप्लेन कर दी जाएगी, जबकि यहाँ पे केस सिर्फ मैरिज का है, राइट? दो कंसेंटिंग अडल्ट्स ने शादी करी है. आप अगर इस केस के आप जाके कमेंट्स भी पढ़ोगे, so the court has also said that if the community is getting changes or it's getting altered because of such decisions of the youngster, then it cannot be called as an illegal action. They cannot go on and file a complaint against them in the police, because that is according to the law, they are allowed to do the same. Right? Now, there were three cases that were taken into consideration while giving this judgment. Okay, the first was Shakti Vahini versus Union of India, that was related to the dignity. Now, there was Shafin Jahan versus Ashokan KM and others. Now, there the court also said that it is the matter of privacy. Okay, that the society was emerging through a crucial transformational period. Okay, intimacy of marriage lies within privacy, right? So it is a private affair. Someone, what they're doing inside their house is their private affair, right? So which is unavoidable, and even the matters of the fate would have the least effect on them. So that is why the court does not want to get involved in such a matter. Now, these are all covered under the Article 21 of the Constitution of India, because these are the matters that are being taken into consideration. And so that is what the court has said, that if two consenting adults want to stay together after marriage, then they cannot be threatened on any of the grounds. And also, the court has told the police to take certain steps to go into the sensitization of such situations and take the necessary steps accordingly, right? So these are some of the judgments that you also need to take care while you are going for the CLAT examination, because these are the judgments where they try to get your perspective, how well you have understood such judgments also, right? So this is one of such judgments that could be and most important one for your CLAT examination. Now, next judgment that comes up is that media reports that come out during the court observation, right? So when there was a case going on against the Election Commission of India, right, there were certain comments that were done by the Supreme Court which were recorded by the media reports and they were published, and that definitely tarnished the image that ECI was having according to them, right? So they call them murderers and they're hurtful, and they have said a lot of things, right? So now here the court has said that media cannot be stopped फ्रॉम रिपोर्टिंग द ओरल रिमार्क्स. ठीक है, ओरल रिमार्क्स क्या है? जो केस के बीच में रिमार्क्स किए जा रहे हैं, राइट? कोई ऑब्जर्वेशन जो जजेस दे रहे हैं या कुछ भी वो केस सुनने के टाइम पे जो भी जजेस कॉन्वर्सेशन कर रहे हैं दोनों साइड के पैनल्स में, वो भी मीडिया रिकॉर्ड करके डाल रही है, राइट? So that is where you understand what is the core of those judgments, how it all came about, what was the judges listening to, how it all became an entire judgment, why did the judge was thinking in a particular manner. These like reportings help you to understand them also, right? So now the court has said that the honest and the full reportage of these comments give public an insight into whether judges are genuinely applying their minds to resolve the crisis, right? So that also helps you to understand that what was the court doing at the time when these arguments were happening. Were they even listening? What were their observations on the same, right? So this helps you to make up a side on your mind also. Now the second thing that the court also said, that the High Court judges have accused the ECI of being solely responsible for super spread of COVID-19 infection through uncontrollable election rallies, campaigns that were happening during that time. Instead of patting the Election Commission's official on their back, the High Court judges have said that ECI should be charged with murder, right? Because during the time of COVID-19 second wave, there were a lot of super spreader events that were happening all across. So definitely that was something that has to be taken into consideration. So the High Court has made their own observations regarding the same. Now, what happened? What did the court say towards the end? What was the observation of the court in this kind of a case? Is that we cannot expect the media not to report dialogues, or oral observation are as important as orders, right? Unfolding the process of judicial thinking is equally to the interest of the public, right? Now, Justice D.Y. Chandrachud has addressed the ECI that was represented by the senior advocate Rakesh Dwivedi. Now, there was one more paragraph that was said by the court where they have just said that they want to keep the discussion between the bar and bench on the same pedestal. We wish that media should report fully what was happening in the court. It brings a sense of accountability. Media reporting would also show that we are dispensing our duties fully, right? So that is completely in the favor of the justice of people who are watching these news, who are following these judgments. They should know how it all came about, right? If you are not able to understand what were the oral remarks that was given by the one side, then what is the sense of reading the judgment also, right? So that is why the court has said that mentioning or writing up these oral remarks is not a problem. Media can record the same, but ECI was not absolutely happy with that. Now, coming with the next part is that the complaint cannot be proceeded with once the accused and the complainant had entered into a settled agreement, right? So this was the case of MS Gimpex Private Limited versus Manoj Goyal. So there is a basic case that you need to understand here is that Manoj Goyal was someone who helped bringing of the cargoes and everything on the ports, right? And MS Gimpex have came into consideration that they wanted some services for him and they paid him some money and he was not able to provide those services. Okay? So now there was a complaint because when the money was asked by Manoj Goyal, he gave back some of the checks, which these checks have bounced. Okay. Now what was happening in this case was that Supreme Court observed that the complaint under section 138 of the Negotiable Instrument Act, because there was a check that bounced. So there was a Negotiable Instrument Act that was being put up here, and it said that it cannot be proceeded with once the accused and the complainant have entered into a settled agreement. ठीक है, तो जब वो चेक बाउंस हुए तो उन्होंने कंप्लेन किया, फिर एक सेटलमेंट हुआ. ठीक है, मनोज गोयल एंड गिम्पेक्स लिमिटेड entered into a settlement. right? That they will pay them some 3 crore rupees now, and they owed them 7 crores. They said we'll pay 3 crores now, then we'll pay the other 4 later, right? So they entered into a settlement agreement. Then when Manoj Goyal gave the check for the settlement agreement, they also bounced. So now this is the case in hand exactly. Now the bench headed by Justice DY observed that non-compliance of the terms of settlement agreements or dishonor of the check issued subsequent to it would then give a rise to a fresh cause of action. That means there has to be a fresh suit, fresh petition that has to be filed, right? Liability under Section 138 of the Negotiable Instrument Act and other remedies that are also available under the civil and the criminal laws, right? So आप देख रहे काफी सारे complications भी हैं इस केस के अंदर, right? Now what was happening in this case, that while during the pendency of the petition that was under 138 of Negotiable Instrument Act, they entered a deed of compromise that I told you, ठीक है? जब बाउंस हुआ चेक केस किया, फिर कॉम्प्रोमाइज कर लिया. Now the checks were issued in pursuance of the deed of compromise which were dishonored, ठीक है? वो 3 करोड़ का चेक जो उन्होंने दिया वो फिर से dishonor हो गया, and therefore a second complaint was instituted under Section 138 of Negotiable Instrument Act. Right now, this petition that was filed by the accused, the second complaint was quashed by the High Court. The High Court said that you cannot file the second complaint. Now, why did the court say that? Whether the complaint can be allowed to pursue both the cases, whether one of them must be quashed in the consequences relating from such quashing. Now, the final thing that the court said here was that the court has made the following observation to hold that the origin complaint must be quashed and parties must proceed with the remedies available in the law under the settlement agreement. Okay, so जो law settlement agreement के अंदर है, अब उसके थ्रू आपको जाना पड़ेगा क्योंकि उन्होंने settlement agreement को break किया, ना कि अब negotiable instrument की बात रह गई है, right? So they have to change the course of their entire resolution or remedies that they are looking from the law, right? So this was a very interesting case that has happened, and you can write the name of this case, that is MS Gimpex Private Limited versus Mr. Manoj Goyal, right? So very interesting case, and also talks about the settlement agreements in the country and how it's happening, why the court wants them to choose a different course of scenario. Now you can understand that better. Now coming to the next case is that the dying declaration, okay, that the dying declaration that is recorded by police officer is admissible. अगर आपको पता होगा कोई भी confession आप police officer के सामने देते हो, so that is not admissible in the court of law. It needs to be in front of a magistrate. अगर आपने magistrate के सामने अपना confession नहीं दिया है, तो वो कोई admissibility नहीं है. But the court has said this in the case, right? There was a criminal case where there was a person who was dying and he gave his dying declaration to the police, right? And this is a case of 2007 or 8, somewhere around that. So it is somewhere around 14 years old case, right? And if there's a 14-year-old case and the only person who has taken that dying declaration is that police officer, right? So Allahabad High Court has said and upholds the life sentence in the murder case and has said that the dying declaration that is recorded by a police officer is admissible in the court of law. Now, the Allahabad High Court, now the murder case dates back to 2002, right? So I told you that 2002, more than 20 years it took to come on this observation for the court, but definitely they have given the right observation, that they have said that there is no prohibition that the police personnel should not record dying declaration, and thus that such a dying declaration is also admissible in evidence. So Evidence Act के अंदर dying declaration के बारे में लिखा गया है and about its admissibility in the court. So you can definitely read the Evidence Act if you are interested more on that, right? So there was a judge bench of Ramesh Sinha and Justice Vikas Bhatia, and who said that there might be certain defects in the investigation so conducted by the IO, that is the investigation officer, but the same cannot ipso facto be ground to hold that the appellants are not guilty, as there exists ocular and documentary evidence which proves that the appellants have committed the murder of the deceased. ठीक है? So आपको ये समझना है कि ऐसे केसेस के अंदर देखिए जहां पे क्लियर कट डिसाइड नहीं हो सकता कि किसने मर्डर किया है, ठीक है? सो कोर्ट के सामने सिर्फ एक चीज प्रूव करनी होती है, दैट इज बियॉन्ड रीजनेबल डाउट। अगर कोर्ट को लगता है कि बियॉन्ड रीजनेबल डाउट वो चीज सच है, ठीक है, कि इसी आदमी ने मारा होगा, तो कोर्ट उस पर डिसीजन ले सकता है, राइट? सो इफ इट इज क्लियर बियॉन्ड रीजनेबल डाउट दैट सच अ क्राइम हैज बीन कमिटेड एंड इफ देयर इज अ डाइंग डिक्लेरेशन दैट इज बीन टेकन बाय द पुलिस, even if there are some irregularities that were there while investigation of the case by the investigation officer, still they would allow such a recorded statement or dying declaration recorded by the police in the court. So that is a very, very important case that you have in your hand. Right now, what did the court say in the end? That this court has to adopt a pragmatic approach, okay, as this court cannot travel into the minds of the person who was recording the dying declaration, and he was the best suited person to take the decision for recording the dying declaration. Nonetheless, there is nothing on record to suggest that there was any anonymity of PW7 with the appellant. There was no cross-examination done by the defense, and also dying declaration cannot be merely disregarded on the grounds that the same has been recorded by a police personnel or certificate of witness was not obtained. So these are not the ways where you can deny such a dying declaration, because that is a very important piece of that observation, right? And it is a very important, it is a material fact of such a case. So the court has to use it, and the court will definitely rely some of their parts of their judgments on such strong evidences that were taken by the police personnel, right? So the court also takes such a decision and gives sometimes such observations which will help you to understand that there are a lot of laws that are based out of interpretation, right? So it all depends on your interpretation, how you are interpreting the law, and how the court is taking it ahead for themselves. Okay, so this was the case that is there. So that is it for today, guys. I hope you understood these some important cases and how their perspective has changed and what were the courts trying to do in such a case. So don't forget to hit on the like, share, and subscribe button. Thanks for joining me for the live session. Hope to see you all on another Friday with a value added session where we'll be discussing some tips and tricks for some law entrances that are coming ahead. So don't forget to comment down below what are you looking forward to for us to put on the channel. We'll be definitely taking your suggestions ahead, right? Thanks for joining this live session. Keep yourself safe, and also don't forget to wear your mask and use your hand sanitizers and maintain social distancing, and take care of yourself. Keep studying and keep smiling. Thanks for joining this live session. This was your host Sanjeet Bhatia. Don't forget to hit on the like button and the subscribe button. Thank you.